Picture a classroom, not a chaotic one, but
Yeah.
the kind of classroom that gets put on the cover of a brochure. The teacher is working quietly with a small group in the corner.
Oh, right. The perfect aesthetic.
Exactly. And the rest of the kids are at their desks or maybe scattered around the room in these little reading centers. Heads are down, pencils are moving, everyone is filling out a worksheet.
And it is absolutely silent.
Completely silent. If you walk past that room, you look in and think, wow, look at all that learning happening.
I mean, it looks like the ultimate picture of educational productivity. It feels comforting, it seems orderly, and it is entirely misleading.
Which brings us to our mission for today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are jumping into a really fascinating stack of sources ranging from cognitive psychology journals to frontline case studies.
And the goal here is to completely upend how you think about learning, studying, and productivity.
Yeah, whether you are, prepping for a big meeting, trying to pick up a new coding language, or studying for a licensing exam, we're going to explore the critical difference between busy work and skill work.
Right, because the difference is massive.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we're also going to equip you with this 60-second method to convert literally any passive learning task into a high-impact mental workout. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The story about those silent reading centers from our source material really hit me. The person sharing it is a former classroom teacher who admits she used to run those exact centers.
Yeah, she was doing the worksheet thing.
Right. The kids were busy, she felt productive, but she realized nothing was actually moving forward. It was basically just crowd control.
So where is the disconnect between the appearance of learning and actual brain development?
Well, the sources outline this core misconception that we have to dismantle today. We carry this false belief that more time on task, more highlighted textbook pages, and just sitting quietly at a desk automatically equals cognitive growth. Like if the pencil is moving, the brain is growing.
Exactly. We mistakenly equate physical stillness and a moving pencil with actual education. But to understand why the crowd control method fails, we first have to recognize a fundamental difference that most of us never really consider.
And what's that?
It's the dangerous confusion between a topic and a skill. A topic is merely a category. So reading is a topic. Math is a topic. Project management is a topic.
Okay.
You cannot actually practice a broad category. You can only practice a specific skill. So while reading is a broad topic, decoding multisyllable words is a skill.
I see. So while math is a topic, executing a quadratic equation is a skill.
Right? And while marketing is a topic, writing a compelling call to action is a specific, actionable skill.
Oh, wow, this is such a light bulb moment. Let me try an analogy here because it immediately reminds me of going to the gym.
Okay, I love a gym analogy.
Treating a topic like a skill is like walking into a fitness center and saying, well, I'm doing fitness today, and then you just aimlessly wander around.
You're just in the building.
Yeah. You touch a treadmill. You sit on a stationary bike for 2 minutes to check your phone. You stare at a dumbbell. You are physically inside the building of fitness, but you aren't doing anything measurable.
Right.
Whereas a skill is walking in and saying, I am doing progressive overload on my bicep curls.
That analogy captures the mechanism perfectly. One is a vague proximity to an idea, and the other introduces targeted, measurable friction.
Makes total sense.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources give us a very hard, fast rule here. If you cannot name the specific skill an assignment or study session is building, it is merely busy work.
Wow.
It feels productive to the person doing it. You print out the packet, you color code your notes, the administrative itch gets scratched. But the learner is just existing in the fitness building without actually lifting the weights.
That makes intuitive sense, but it leaves me wondering about the mechanics of the assignments themselves.
How do you mean?
Well, say I sit down to study for a real estate license. I am doing practice quizzes. That's not just a vague topic. Those are actual questions about property law. Why does simply answering those questions sometimes fail to build the skill?
Okay. That brings us to what cognitive researchers identify as getting stuck at level 2.
Level 2.
Yeah, let's map these out so we know exactly what we are measuring against. Level 1 is pure exposure or ignorance. You hear a term like amortization in a meeting. You know it's a real estate term, but you have zero idea what it means or how to calculate it.
Right, you just recognize the shape of the word.
Exactly. Then you move to level 2, which is supported competence. This is when you can get the right answer, but only with the book open or only with explicit help. Think of a fill-in-the-blank packet or looking up a Python script on Stack Overflow to paste into your code. You get the correct output, and it masquerades as success.
Oh, man. It's like using GPS to drive to a new restaurant.
Yeah.
You successfully navigate there, you arrive at your destination, so you feel like you know the route. But if someone takes your phone away the next day and asks you to drive there again, you are completely lost. You basically outsource the cognitive load to the device.
That is the perfect illustration of level 2. You are entirely dependent on the material being right in front of you. The student or the professional gets the answer right, calls it done, and moves on, without ever internalizing the information.
So what's the goal then?
We need to push past that to level 3, which is independent execution. Driving there without the GPS, solving the equation with the book closed, and finally, we want to aim for level 4, which is synthesis and mastery.
Meaning you can teach it to someone else.
Exactly. Teaching it or applying it to a completely novel situation.
But wait, I have to push back here. Isn't repetition the mother of skill? I mean, what about volume? If I write out that Python script 50 times, or if I do one of those classic 100-problem math worksheets we all had to do as kids, surely doing a specific operation 100 times forces you from level 2 to level 3 through sheer muscle memory.
See, muscle memory is exactly the problem. The source material completely debunks the volume myth.
Really?
Yeah. Let's look at the brain during that 100-problem math worksheet, or while typing the same line of code 50 times. After the first 10 correct answers, the cognitive load drops to near 0.
Just 10.
Just 10, because the brain is an incredibly calorie-efficient organ. It wants to conserve energy. Once it recognizes a pattern, it offloads that task from the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking, learning part of your brain, to the basal ganglia, which handles automatic habits.
So the brain literally turns off the learning center because it realizes it doesn't need it to finish the worksheet.
It goes entirely on autopilot. Problems 11 through 100 might build a little bit of mechanical speed in your fingers, but they absolutely do not build deep neural pathways associated with understanding.
Wow.
Synaptic plasticity, which is the actual physical altering of your brain that constitutes learning, requires friction. It requires struggle. When you engage in mindless repetition, you've stopped lifting the heavy weight.
Doing something 100 times doesn't make you 100 times smarter. It just makes you a highly efficient robot executing a script.
Precisely.
Okay, so if traditional repetition puts us on autopilot and open book studying traps us at level 2, how do we fix this? Because adult learners still have to memorize massive amounts of vocabulary, right? Like nursing students have to learn hundreds of medical terms.
Right, and this is where we introduce what the sources call the busy work converter. It is a method to flip these rote tasks into true skill work, aiming directly for level 4. And the best part, it takes under 60 seconds once you see the pattern.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources provide concrete examples. Let's run through them, starting with vocabulary.
Okay, let's do it.
The classic busy work version, whether you're in 5th grade or studying for the nursing boards, is basically copy each term and its definition 10 times.
And as we just discussed, the only skill that builds is the skill of copying. After 10 copies, the learner might be able to spell the word from short-term memory for a quiz that afternoon, but they cannot apply it in a clinical setting. They haven't wrestled with the nuance.
So how do we convert that specific task to level 4?
Instead of copying the medical term 10 times, the learner must write out an original clinical scenario using the word about their own life. Then they have to verbally explain the meaning of that scenario to someone else, or even just out loud to an empty room, without looking at the definition.
Oh, I love that. You can't fake that. You can't just pattern match the textbook. You have to translate the abstract concept into a practical application.
Exactly. You are forcing the brain to process the information deeply, apply it to a personal or professional context, and then physically articulate it. That introduces the necessary cognitive friction.
Let's look at the math or logic-based conversion next, because this blew my mind.
Oh, this one is great.
The busy work is the 100-problem worksheet, or writing out a massive block of repetitive code, the autopilot generator.
Right. And the conversion here requires you to completely slash the volume. You have the learner do exactly 10 problems, but you spread them across 3 difficulty levels: easy, medium, and challenge.
Okay.
Then comes the crucial step. You have the learner explain the hardest problem out loud. They have to answer diagnostic questions like, why does this logic loop work? Or, what happens to the output if I change this specific variable?
I'm assuming the act of speaking is the key mechanism there, because, thinking about the math problem and talking about the math problem feel completely different.
Yes. Speaking aloud engages entirely different neural circuitry than your internal monologue. This taps into dual coding theory.
Oh, fascinating.
When you just think about a problem, your brain can skip over gaps in your logic. It glosses over the parts you don't quite understand. But when you are forced to translate that abstract thought into motor speech pathways, engaging Broca's area in the brain to form sentences, you cannot hide from your own ignorance. You immediately discover exactly where your understanding falls apart.
It's the ultimate proof that quality over quantity isn't just some motivational poster cliche. It is a biological fact of how we learn.
Absolutely.
10 real problems where the learner navigates varying difficulties and verbally defends their logic scientifically beats 100 mindless repetitions every single time. It is infinitely more work for the brain, even though it takes less time.
You are forcefully keeping the prefrontal cortex engaged. But what happens when we shift from rigid logic, like math or coding, to something much more abstract? Because the brain requires a completely different type of friction for narratives and unstructured concepts.
Yeah, let's look at passive learning. Say I'm trying to learn about market economics by reading a dense chapter in a book, or I'm watching a high-end documentary about the Roman Empire.
Right.
How do we convert passive consumption? Because reading feels incredibly productive.
It does. Let's tackle reading first. The standard busy work assignment, or honestly the way most adults study, is to read a chapter, highlight key phrases, and then answer a set of review questions at the end with the book still open.
The classic hunt and peck method. You scan the page until you find a word that matches the question.
Exactly. The learner isn't comprehending the arc of the chapter, they are just matching text strings. The question asks about supply-side economics, so they flip back, find the bold word, and copy the sentence around it. It is the definition of level 2.
Just scanning and copying.
And the phenomenon you mentioned earlier, where reading feels productive, is actually called the illusion of fluency. Because the author's words flow smoothly into your brain, you mistake your ability to read the text for your ability to understand the concept.
Wow. The conversion here is beautifully simple, but genuinely uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable.
You read the chapter, and then you close the book. You teach back the main idea in your own words. Then the sources suggest answering an unscripted application question. Like, if it's a history book, you ask yourself, what would I have done differently than that historical figure based on the economic pressures of the time?
Closing the book is the magic step. It forces what cognitive scientists call retrieval practice.
Retrieval practice.
Yes, you have to pull the information out of your own memory storage rather than just recognizing it on the page. The application question forces you to synthesize the information and project it into a new scenario, pushing you straight to level 4.
What about video? I am definitely guilty of this. I will watch a brilliant hour-long documentary about black holes, and I feel like an absolute astrophysicist while I'm watching it. The animations are gorgeous, the narrator is compelling, and it feels deeply educational.
Well, it feels educational because the production value is high, and the narrative structure does all the heavy lifting for your brain. Passive watching, with no follow-up, is essentially entertainment disguised as education.
Ouch.
The source material points out that without active retrieval, the information starts fading within hours. You enjoyed it, but you didn't chemically alter your brain to store it.
So the conversion for video is watch the documentary and then immediately, out loud, explain the 2 most important things you just learned to the room.
Yes. And this brings us to a vital concept regarding memory decay. The sources reference the principles found in the cognitive science book Make It Stick.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
When you ask a learner to recall the video's contents immediately, you engage in retrieval practice. But the real magic happens if you ask them to explain those 2 key takeaways again the next day without rewatching the video.
Because memory naturally degrades over time, right? Like the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve.
Exactly. In the late 19th century, Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered that we lose about 50% of new information within a single hour if we don't do anything with it.
50% in an hour.
Yeah. By forcing yourself to retrieve that memory the next day, you initiate a spaced review. Every time your brain struggles to pull up a fading memory, it physically thickens the myelin sheath around the neural pathway associated with that information. It insulates the connection, making the signal travel faster and stronger the next time. You are actively fighting the biological forgetting curve.
Looking at these 4 completely different scenarios, medical vocabulary, coding logic, textbook reading, and science videos, a universal pattern emerges.
It really does.
This is something you, the listener, can apply to literally any learning scenario in your professional or personal life.
Right. The sources distill this down into a master formula. A three-step process to ensure you are doing high-friction skill work, not low-friction busy work.
Step 1. Name the skill. Not the broad topic, but the specific, actionable capability you're trying to improve. If you can't name the skill, stop studying immediately. You are just wandering around the gym.
Spot on. And step 2, push past level 2. Remove the safety net. You have to do the work without the book open, without the answer key, without the helpful prompts. You have to turn off the GPS.
And step 3, add retrieval. Close the book, explain the concept out loud, teach it to a friend, or apply it to a totally novel situation. So, name the skill. Push past level 2, add retrieval.
Which raises the practical reality of implementing such a system. Because, let's be honest, this sounds significantly harder. It requires vastly more mental energy than just passively highlighting a textbook or filling out a worksheet.
So what does this all mean for you? Why should you subject yourself to the discomfort of this three-step formula? The ultimate payoff is actually about protecting your time.
Absolutely. Time is everything.
Attention spans are short, and time is our most limited resource, especially for an adult trying to upskill for their career after a long day at work. When you engage in busy work, you can drag a study session out for 3 hours. It feels painful, and it's remarkably low-quality time.
It is the illusion of productivity. You are spending time, but you are not building competence.
But by applying this formula, your brain food time gets dramatically shorter, but infinitely more effective. Instead of 3 hours of mixed-quality, frustrating, busy work where you drift in and out of autopilot, you get maybe 30 to 40 minutes of intense, focused skill work.
And every single minute of that time is thickening neural pathways.
Exactly. You learn more, you retain it longer, and you never waste time wondering if your study methods are actually working.
You trade the warm comfort of passive busy work for the highly efficient friction of active skill building. The golden rule the sources leave us with is uncompromising. If you can't name the skill, convert it or cut it.
Convert it or cut it. I love the ruthlessness of that standard. It really respects your time.
It does.
Here is our challenge to you for this week. Take one task you have to learn. Maybe it's a training module for human resources, maybe it's studying for a certification, or even an assignment you're helping your kid with. Run it through the three-step formula. Name the skill. Push past level 2. Add retrieval. See how it feels to actually do the heavy lifting, and watch how much more information you retain the next day.
It will feel distinctly different. It will feel like a struggle. But that localized struggle is the physical sensation of learning happening in real time.
And speaking of that struggle, there is a fascinating tease hidden at the very end of our source material today.
Oh, right, the forgetting aspect.
Yeah. It mentions something we have all experienced. You learn a complex concept on Monday, you feel incredibly confident about it, and by Thursday it is just completely gone. You draw a blank. It is terrifying, especially if you have a massive presentation or a licensing test coming up.
Well, we culturally view forgetting as a failure of our intellect. We think our brains are malfunctioning.
But the sources note that forgetting is an entirely normal biological imperative. The brain has to clear out space. Which leaves us with a provocative thought to mull over until next time.
I love this part.
If forgetting isn't a glitch, but a totally normal, expected part of the human operating system, is it possible that the very act of forgetting and the frustrating, messy, desperate struggle to remember a fading detail is actually the exact mechanism required to make learning stick permanently? Keep that in mind the next time you draw a blank.